What if the current crisis between Iran and Israel wasn't born in a modern war room, but in the sacred pages of Scripture? What if today's missiles, political alliances, and nuclear threats are merely shadows, echoes of a spiritual battle that has raged for thousands of years? This is more than politics, more than military maneuvering. This is prophecy in motion. As tensions rise in the Middle East, something in your spirit whispers, "This feels ancient," and it is. The roots of this conflict are not found in 2024, or even in 1948, but all the way back to Genesis, to Eden, to Abraham, to a war that predates the nations themselves. Today, we'll journey from the garden to the battlefield, from Esther to Ezekiel, from ancient Persia to modern Iran. You'll discover why this land, this people, have always been at the center of global conflict and spiritual warfare. And most of all, you'll see how prophecy is not only unfolding before your eyes, but how you are being invited to take your place in it. Before Iran had missiles, it had a spirit, a spiritual hostility against the covenant people of God that is not new, but ancient. We see it in Pharaoh. We see it in Haman. We see it in Herod, and in every empire that tried to erase Israel from the earth. The book of Esther isn't just a historical account, it's a spiritual blueprint. Haman, empowered by hatred, plots genocide, but behind him is a deeper darkness, the enemy's ancient rage against God's chosen. Why? Because through Israel came the promise, the Messiah, the salvation of mankind. That same spirit breathes today in chants calling for Israel's destruction. The same hatred that nailed Christ to the cross is now aimed at the nation that birthed him. But God never sleeps. Esther was raised for such a time as this. And today, the church must recognize the same calling, not to bow, but to rise, not to panic, but to pray. Modern Iran is not the first version of Persia. There was a time when Persia was a tool in God's hand. When King Cyrus, though a Gentile, though a pagan, was called my shepherd and my anointed by God himself. He was used to deliver Israel from exile, to fund the rebuilding of the temple, to fulfill prophecy spoken by Isaiah more than a century prior. Cyrus didn't know the Lord, but he obeyed his will. God showed us then what he is still capable of now, using unlikely vessels for divine purposes. He doesn't need a man's allegiance to use his influence. And the throne of Persia, once a stage for restoration, has now become a front for rebellion. But take heart. The God who moved Cyrus can move again. Or he can break again. Because the war is never about size or weapons, it's about sovereignty. In Daniel chapter 10, we pull back the curtain. Daniel prays, and an angel is sent, but delayed. Why? Because a dark power, a prince of Persia, opposed him in the unseen realm. This wasn't metaphor, it was warfare. Spiritual principalities govern earthly kingdoms. Behind the policies of Persia, then and now, are forces that war against God's plans. Daniel's story reminds us, prayer is not passive. It's warfare. While the world debates politics, the faithful contend in prayer, and heaven moves. Daniel wasn't powerful by position but by posture. Today, when you pray for Israel, when you fast, when you cry out for truth amid chaos, you're not just being religious, you're joining a centuries-long war between darkness and light. The book of Ezekiel paints a chilling prophecy in chapters 38 and 39. A coalition will rise in the last days, Gog, Magog, in Persia, modern Iran, among others. They will gather to attack Israel, not for ideology, but for plunder, not for politics, but under divine orchestration. This is not fiction, this is scripture. And God says he will draw them in, not to allow destruction, but to display his power. Earthquakes, fire, confusion, a miraculous defense that will leave the world in awe, knowing that Israel stands not because of military might, but because of divine mercy. The prophecy is clear. Persia will rise, but so will God's judgment. Buried in Jeremiah chapter 49 is a prophecy rarely taught. It speaks directly to ancient Elam, located in modern-day Iran. God declares he will break their strength, scatter their people, and bring calamity. But the chapter ends with something shocking. Yet I will restore the fortunes of Elam in the latter days. Yes, judgment is real, but so is mercy. The very nation plotting Israel's destruction may one day become a center of revival. Underground churches in Iran are already growing. Former Muslims are coming to faith through dreams, visions, and quiet whispers in the dark. God is moving where the media never looks. This is not blind optimism. It's scriptural realism. God has not forgotten the soil he once blessed. And the fires of persecution are often the furnace where revival is born. Zechariah chapters 12 and 14 echo with urgency. Jerusalem will become a cup of trembling. All nations will gather against it. The Mount of Olives will split. The Lord himself will return. This is not poetic language. This is prophecy. Why does the world rage over a sliver of land the size of New Jersey? Because Jerusalem is not just soil, it's sacred. It's the center of the covenant, the final battleground before the return of the king. And Iran? Their threats are not just national. They are spiritual. The same spirit that moved Haman, Hitler, and Herod is whispering again. But that spirit is doomed. God will defend his city. And every nation, every regime, every prince of darkness that rises against Jerusalem will fall. You may not hear it on the news, but revival is stirring in the shadows. The gospel reached Persia early in church history. Some of the first believers carried it eastward, through Persia, beyond Babylon, all the way to India and China. And today, despite persecution, Iran holds one of the fastest growing underground church movements in the world. The soil is cracked, but the roots of revival are deep. God's Spirit is falling on Persian sons and daughters, just as Joel prophesied. And perhaps, just perhaps, those who curse Israel today may one day bless her. This is not a drill. This is not a movie. This is your moment in redemptive history. You're not just watching news unfold, you're watching prophecy converge. Jesus told us in Matthew 24 and Luke 21, when you see these things begin to happen, look up, not in fear, but in faith. Now is the time for the church to wake up, to fast, to pray, to intercede like Esther, to speak like Daniel, to walk like watchmen on the walls of Jerusalem. The nations rage, but our God reigns. The enemy builds his gallows, but deliverance is coming. And the scrolls are unrolling faster than the missiles. So do not panic. Prepare. Watch the signs, know the word, and stand in the gap. Because the same God who named Cyrus, who broke Babylon, who defended Esther, and who promised restoration to Elam, is still on the throne. And his final word will be victory.